allow the MEC for Finance to deliver the provincial budget speech and for the House to consider the money bill as required by the standing rules. Honorable members, I evoke Rule 47 of the standing rules of the Northwest Provincial Legislature to give access for non-members of the legislature to occupy seats that are ordinarily reserved for members for the duration of the sitting. Secretary, you may read the next order.
Order number 2, proceedings on Bill 2.1, Northwest Appropriation Bill 2026, introduction and first reading.
Thank you, Secretariat. Honourable members, I will now call on Honourable Mosenogi to introduce and table the Northwest Appropriation Bill 2026 for consideration by the House. Honourable Mosenogi, you have 40 minutes.
Ke a leboga Musa Khotla. Ke ba bona ba yo. My blood remains red, black, green and gold. Honorable Speaker Dr. Sebonda Samasona Mohono, the Deputy Speaker Ntate Colin Mokoni Maine, the Honorable Premier Ntate Lazarus Kagiso Mokhosi, the Provincial Chairperson of the African National Congress Ntate Dumile Nono Maloi, members of the Executive Council, members of the Provincial Legislature, the Chairperson of House of Traditional and Khoisan Leaders, Khosi Tarima Otwe Wabobedi, mayors and executive mayors, members of the mayoral committees responsible for finance, chairpersons of MPECs across all the municipalities, Baagi, Babukoni Bupirima, comrades and friends, Dumelang. Honorable Speaker, 30 years ago, the founding father of our democratic nation, Nelson Mandela, signed into law the country's democratic constitution, marking a turning point in our socio-economic and political trajectory. The historic and symbolic moment held in Kliptown in 1996 affirmed the long-standing resolve of our forebears who in 1955 proclaimed that South Africa belongs to all who live in it, black and white. This bold pronouncement, taken under the harsh conditions of minority rule and racial exclusion, culminated in the establishment of a society based on democratic values, social justice, and fundamental human rights to provide equal rights and opportunities to all people. It is the strength, sweat, and blood of the 1956 August Women March, as well as the 1976 June 16 activist, which continues to nourish our democratic gains. These acts of resilience have laid a firm foundation in our continued endeavor to unite our people by creating conditions that will make women and young people in particular to witness the full realization of our national democratic project. This important milestone, which also coincides with Human Rights Month, held under the theme Bill of Rights at 30, making a human dignity real, impresses upon us not to relent on our ongoing effort of ensuring that the poor and economically marginalized benefits from the promises of our constitutional democracy in every practical sense and measurable way. The values of dignity, equality, and social justice, as espoused in the preamble of the Constitution, must energize our revolutionary consciousness and serve as a moral compass for how we allocate resources. Honorable Speaker, guided by the country's national priorities, this budget is designed to translate our constitutional right into lived realities of our people whose dreams and aspirations remain hatched in our national democratic revolution. This commitment, as explained by Premier Lazarus Kagiso Mokgotsi during the debate on State of the Nation address, I quote, is not merely about catchphrases and how revolutionary we sound to sway public opinion, but to turn the tide against challenges of unemployment and poverty afflicting our communities. Honorable Speaker, through targeted investment in education, healthcare, infrastructure development, economic revitalization, empowerment of women and youth, and people with disability or living with disability, we are making deliberate fiscal choices to advance and consolidate our developmental trajectory. This includes inclusive growth, job creation, poverty alleviation, as well as strengthening the capacity of the state to reverse past injustices by creating a better life for all. The mid-year population estimates of 2025 report by Statistics South Africa highlighted that Northwest Province has a population of about 4.18 million, which constitute 6.6% of South African population. About half of the residents of the province are living in poverty and depend on government intervention and remnants of their livelihoods. Therefore, the budget proposal being tabled today are primarily aimed at finding lasting solutions to these challenges, with municipalities playing a central role in bettering the lives of our people through transformation of our economy. Musa khotla ka jalo, tekanyetsokabo eno e itshegeditse thata ka ditshwetso tse di tshotsweng ke khuduthamaga ya province ka nako ya fa ithunya dinta kwa kgotakgoteng ya province ya dipusoselegae go tokafatsa dimasepale le matshelo a baagi ba rona. Honorable Speaker, therefore this budget is firmly anchored on the provincial government position to fix local government and transform the economy, as articulated by the Honorable Premier during the 2026 State of the Province address. The budget proposal being tabled have been deliberately crafted to translate those resolutions into actions and measurable outcomes for the people of the province. The budget we table today for the Northwest Province total 179.3 billion over the medium term. This reflects an average annual growth rate of 2.1%, with allocations rising from 58.5 billion in 2026-2027 financial year to 56.6 billion in 2027-2028, and concluding at 61.2 billion in the final year of the MTEF period. The budget is presented against the backdrop of a significant 3.6 billion reduction, which was implemented over the 2025 MTEF. This reduction stems from data updates on provincial equitable share formula, which has negatively affected our province baseline allocation and consequently our capacity to address core provincial priorities. The province engaged National Treasury through both the Technical Committee on Finance and Budget Council to explain the negative implication of this reduction on the ability of the province to fulfill its mandate and the priorities of the 7th administration. Honorable Speaker, as a result of our robust engagement, the province has received an additional amount of 1.8 billion as a cushion to mitigate the impact of this reduction. The additional allocation was distributed during the adjustment budget and over the MTF. As such, we will ensure that money is spent wisely to achieve the intended objectives of government of expediting provisions of services in our municipalities while advocating for good ethical practices. In this regard, we are encouraged by the 2024-2025 municipal audit outcome that while challenges in local government remains, the trajectory of reform is shifting. Over the past 5 financial years, the province have recorded a significant reduction in disclaimer audit opinion, declining from 9 in 2020-2021 to 1 in 2024-2025. In addition, the number of municipalities receiving unqualified with findings opinion increased to 6 in 2024-2025 compared to 3 in the previous MFMA audit cycle. Notably, Mamusa local municipality improved significantly from 7 disclaimer audit opinion in a row, followed by an adverse audit opinion for 2023-2024 to a qualified opinion in 2024-2025 financial year. This performance reflects a meaningful and measurable shift in municipalities. Honorable Speaker, 2021-2025 financial year, only 5 municipalities in the province adopted funded budget in full compliance with Section 18 of the MFMA. The number has increased to 9 funded budgets in 2025-2026 financial year. These encouraging signs are further bolstered by the implementation of various legislation by the provincial government to make municipalities workable and position them as organs that will reincarnate economic activities and create jobs. Our efforts in striving towards good governance practices in the provincial government is also gaining traction at a faster pace. The provincial department audit outcome for the financial year, which ended 31st of March 2025, saw 10 provincial departments and the provincial legislature received unqualified audit opinions, while these were 2 qualified audit opinions. It is worth noting that the Provincial Treasury, Arts, Culture, Sports, Recreation, and the Northwest Provincial Legislature maintain their clean audit opinion. The public entities audit outcome saw 6 entities receiving unqualified audit opinion with no material findings, that is clean audit opinion. The Akama Wildlife, Agribank, Youth Enterprise Services, Clean Mariko Recreation Center, Donkey Fleet Recreation Center, and Northwest Gambling Board. 2 entities received unqualified audit opinions, while 2 entities received qualified opinions and 4 entities received disclaimer audit opinion. Honorable Speaker, the announcement by Minister of Finance in Ogodongwane of an estimated 1.6% growth rate this year, supported by investment due to the competitive interest rate and reliable electricity supply, gives credence to our assertion that indeed the tide is turning. This is exemplified by the 78,000 jobs created in Q3 and 4 of 2025. This upward trajectory, which marks the reduction of the official unemployment rate by over 6% in the province, strengthens our position to direct our resources to infrastructure projects to attract investment and create much-needed jobs. During the State of the Nation address, His Excellency Cyril Ramaphosa made a similar observation when he said, and I quote, our economy is growing again, and this growth is gathering pace. As the economy grows, the rate of unemployment is starting to decline, close quote. Over the medium term, National Treasury projects growth to average 1.8%, reaching 2% by 2028. We are, however, concerned about the current geopolitical conflict between the United States and Iran, which has potential to result in surge of oil prices. This will have spillover effect in global food prices, inflation rates, and currency fluctuations. But all is not lost, as the increase in the demand for platinum and gold will bring positive spin-offs and multiplier effect that will contribute immensely to our job creation initiatives. Honorable Speaker, following the approval of accrual strategy by the Executive Council, which is implemented, its implementation is mandatory. Non-cash backs accruals from previous financial year will be addressed separately and will not form part of allocations for the current financial year. Furthermore, to address spending agencies, overcommitting beyond the monthly cash flow projections approved by the Provincial Treasury, it has been agreed with the respective accounting officers who are here today that henceforth departments will have to strictly adhere to the approved monthly cash flow projections in line with the Public Finance Management Act provision and Treasury regulations. Honorable Speaker, the compliance of the Provincial Revenue Enhancement Strategy is at an advanced stage and is expected to be finalized once all the departments' input have been received and all relevant parties are consulted. Key interventions to improve the provincial revenue enhancement will include optimizing own revenue sources by implementing market-related tariffs, updating fee structures, and improving billing and debt collection systems. Enhancing compliance and enforcement through stronger debt recovery and stricter penalties. Leveraging state assets by commercializing underutilized properties, conducting asset audits, and pursuing public-private partnerships, and expanding the revenue base through innovative measures such as digital platforms and sustainable green projects. Honorable Speaker, the constrained fiscal envelope continues to exert pressure on the 2026 medium-term expenditure framework. As a result, the maximization of own revenue has become a critical strategy for the province. To ensure optimal collection against approved revenue budgets, Provincial Treasury will enforce stricter accountability measures. Where departments are under collecting revenue without justifiable reasons, the shortfall will be recovered from the first tranche of their budget transfer. This measure will compel departments to implement credible and effective revenue enhancement strategies and prevent the recurrence of under-collection. These interventions are necessary to avoid unfunded budgets, protect fiscal discipline, and to safeguard service delivery in the province. Honorable Speaker, the province has allocated over 100 billion since the inception of the 7th administration. The administration hit the ground running and achieved various key milestones amongst others. The province, in its quest to tackle the triple challenges of poverty, unemployment, and inequality, has in the past 2 years taken a deliberate effort to focus on programs that empower designated groups and others that seek to improve socio-economic conditions of our people. The following key milestones have been achieved over the 2 years, while others are continuing well into the 2026-2027 financial year and onwards. The repatriation of remains of our struggle stalwarts who died in exile is a solemn and necessary act of national restoration. By bringing them home, we honor their courage, restore their rightful place in the history of our nation, and give their families and communities the dignity of closure. It is in this regard that the provincial government undertook the repatriation and reburial of human remains of our fallen liberation stalwart, Mr. Aaron Tiro from Zimbabwe and Mr. Maabetlas Bohosing from Zambia. They were both reburied in Likubu village outside Ziras in the Ngaka district on the 7th December 2024. In an endeavor to empower and upskill military veterans, the provincial government has trained over 30 military veterans on manuscript writing in Vryburg in Dr. Rutsiro Mumpati. 5 libraries have been built in rural communities of Mirtol in Mamusa local municipality, 8 Cake, and Madiba Makhabani community library in Mahikeng local municipality, Matau village in Moses Kotani, and Ridirile in Ketleng River local municipality in Derby are ready for use. Another community library in Makwasi Hills local municipality is on practical completion and will be finalized and ready for occupation in 2026-2027 financial year. One sport complex has been completed and functional in Mante village in Greater Taung, as well as a cultural village in Dinokana in Ramotsiri-Muilwa municipality. The libraries and sports facilities will assist our rural communities to promote a culture of reading as well as prevent the community members, especially scholars, from traveling long distance to access these facilities. An amount of 5.1 billion, which is 43%, and 1.9 billion, 70% of the provincial procurement spent on women and youth-owned businesses for 2024-25 financial year for the benefit of 3,129 women-owned and 2,608 youth-owned enterprises. For the 2026 financial year, 2025-2026 financial year, we are confident that 4.9 billion, which is 43%, and 1.9 billion, which is 17%, that had already been spent on 2,508 women-owned and 2,110 youth-owned businesses by the end of December 2025 will have significantly increased by the end of the financial year. Through the Department of Agriculture and Rural Development, an amount of 148.1 million has proportionally been shared amongst women, youth, and people with disability for infrastructure, production inputs, training, capacity building, as well as kaonafatso ya dikgomo over the 2025 MTEF period. Job creation and economic empowerment initiatives have demonstrated that the Department of Agriculture and Rural Development has created 292 jobs in 2024-2025 financial year and is targeting creation of 356 jobs as part of the accelerated growth of strategic industrial and labor-intensive sector. Through the Empowerment Fund, the Department of Economic Development, Environment, Conservation and Tourism supported 9 businesses in 2025 and 11 businesses in the third quarter 2025-2026, aimed at supporting small businesses with production machinery and equipment to sustain and grow the economy, such as sewing, embroidery machines, water purification equipment, brick making equipment, catering equipment, and computers, amongst others. To promote the township and rural business informal and socio-economic program, bakery, smart tuck shop, and mobile kitchens, about 25 informal traders were supported with various interventions. The program supports the stimulation of socio-economic development through the support of informal traders, cooperative, and micro, small, and medium enterprises. During the 2025-2026 financial year, 30 SMMEs were incubated successfully, with another 30 to be incubated during the fourth quarter in 2025-2026, with an allocation of 4.3 million. The incubation program is a collaborative effort between DDECT, Young Africa Enterprise Institute, the Northwest University, and other stakeholders to drive youth entrepreneurship. In 2024-2025, the Department of Health invested in high-end capital equipment to strengthen oncology and surgical services. Mammogram machines were procured by Joe Morolong, Job Shimankani Tabani, and Potchefstroom Hospital at a cost of about 16 million. A brachytherapy unit was installed at a cost of 15 million, enabling precise radiation treatment for cervical and prostate cancer with minimum discomfort as part of the modernization of tertiary healthcare services. The Phokeng Forensic Mortuary was successfully completed and officially opened for operations on 5th February 2025, with a total cost of 44 million. The Department of Health acquired 25 ambulances in 2023-2025, followed by 35 ambulances in 2024-2025, and increased with additional 60 ambulances in 2025-2026. Furthermore, the planned patient transport vehicles have increased with 39 additional vehicles to ensure rapid response and transport for critical ill patients. The Department of Education spent 11 billion to provide 92,344 girl learners in quartile 1 and 3 to 3 and special schools with sanitary dignity towels. Furthermore, the department has provided 50,000 to 719 learners with free education through no-fee school policy, and will continue to do the same in the next financial year by increasing the number to 754,272 learners. In addition, 46,840 children have accessed the ECD centers in 2024-2025, and targeting 50,000 children in the next financial year with an aggregate budget of 480.9 million. In the 2024-2025 financial year, the Department of Social Development funded 302 non-profit organizations to the tune of 241 million. Resultantly, the department created 1,421 work opportunities. 14,305 food parcels were distributed in food insecure households and individuals experiencing distress, undue hardships, and those affected by disasters. 8,335 indigent learners and women benefited from the departmental provision of sanitary dignity packs in 2024-2025 financial year. In the last 2024-2025 financial year, the department funded 133 service clubs, reaching 8,190 older persons. In terms of community safety and transport, spent 441 million in 2024-2025 and 459 million in 2025-2026 in providing scholar transport, benefiting 51,758 and 64,665 learners respectively. Honorable Speaker, since the 2024-2025 financial year to the end of 2025-2026 financial year, the provincial government has continued to prioritize investment in transport infrastructure as a catalyst for economic development, improved mobility, and job creation. The province has completed road infrastructure projects across our municipalities, which collectively generated 401 work opportunities for our communities. The combined contract value of these projects amount to approximately 939 million, demonstrating the province's continued commitment to improving the conditions of our road network. Amongst the most significant projects delivered during this period are the upgrading of Road D201 from Pampierstad to Matlapeng, covering approximately 24 kilometers with an investment of about 168.8 million. The special maintenance of Road P1521 between Sitlagole and Delereyville, covering 28 kilometers, valued at approximately 168.7 million. The upgrade of Road Z374 from Austria to Goodwood, a 24-kilometer project valued at 130 million. The rehabilitation of the Bethany Brits Corridor and Road D109 and D519 spanning approximately 23-kilometer road network with a contract value of over 106 million. And the special maintenance of road of P47 in coastal area valued at over 103 million, improving access and mobility for surrounding communities. This project represents safer roads, improved connectivity for rural communities, better access to economic opportunities, and strengthened regional transport corridors. Honorable Speaker, guided by the Program of Action for the 2026-2027 financial year, this budget proposal supports the implementation of the Service Delivery Action Plan as indicated earlier, adopted at the Provincial Khotakhote and the National Indaba. This budget gives concrete expression of our collective commitment to rebuild capable, responsive, and accountable local government. Honorable Speaker, the allocation of 712.6 million in respect of the Department of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs proposed seeks to enable the department to continue providing support to municipalities and traditional councils. An amount of 25 million over the MTF has been earmarked for support traditional council for construction of new offices, 10 million in 2026-2027 and 5 million in 2027-2028 financial year for maintenance of offices. The allocation will also be used to procure vehicles for traditional leaders, whereby 14 million is set aside for that purpose, as well as to implement phase 3 of the municipal monitoring system dashboard. The Provincial Treasury is allocated 659.1 million, 643.2 million, and 636.6 million over the MTF. The department will use 15 million thereof to implement Section 6 of the PFMA in terms of the scholar transport under community safety. An amount of 15 million has been set aside for operationalization of the development fund, and 10 million in the first 2 years is set aside for capacity assistance program in municipalities and traditional council to strengthen their BTOs. Office of the Premier is allocated 633.7 million, 647 million, and 615.5 million over the MTF to support and conduct oversight on government institutions within the province. Following the approval of SmartGov by the Executive Council, an amount of 110 million has been allocated for the initiative in the first 2 years of the MTF. The Provincial Legislature received 449.6 million to execute its program. The allocation considers a baseline adjustment of 10 million in 2026-2027 and 2027-2028 financial year. That will also address budget pressures in political party funding, constituency allowance, committee work, public hearing, salaries, and other related legislature activities, critical expenditure items. The budget for scholar transport within the Department of Community Safety and Transport has been increased by 50 million in 2026-2027 and 20 million in 2027-2028, mainly to deal with accruals, and therefore the budget for this program amounts to 500 million and 490 million in those financial years respectively, and increased to 480 in the outer year decrease. An amount of 2.3 billion is allocated over the MTF for community bus subsidies. The total budget for this department is therefore 2.6 billion in 2026-2027, 2.6 billion again in 2027-2028, and 2.7 billion in 2028-2029 financial year. Honorable Speaker, the successful implementation of the interventions to improve governance will not only stabilize local government, but will also serve as a catalyst for economic renewal across the province. When municipalities function effectively, infrastructure projects move from plans on paper to construction sites that create jobs, stimulate local enterprise, attract and unlock investment opportunities. An amount of 1 billion is allocated to the Department of Economic Development, Environment, Conservation and Tourism. This will enable the department to implement programs to scale up and coordinate support to SMMEs, cooperatives, and increase the number of competitive small enterprises by intensifying support intervention to focus on women, youth, and persons living with disabilities. The department will further strengthen support infrastructure by establishing 7 enterprise support centers over the 2026 MTF. To date, 6 enterprise information centers were sustained with a total of 11 jobs created for women and children, for performing businesses, development and support services to enterprises and communities. As was articulated by Premier Mokgotsi during the SOPA debate, 40 million has been made available to fund the SEZ, of which about 20 million will assist with project preparation, which includes professional services and relevant studies as well as project design. Honorable Speaker, the financial viability assessment conducted for Northwest Development Corporation has been finalized. The implementation is underway and the transformation will require sustained commitment, adequate resources and strong leadership. The successful implementation will create a financially sustainable and developmentally impactful organization that effectively fulfills its mandate. This program will be rolled out to other public entities, which processes will be done in a phased-in approach. Musa Khotla, mo dikgweding di le mmalwa tse di fetileng, naga ya rona e itemogetse leroborobo la bolwetse jwa dirua, jwa molomo le tlhakwana, jo bo gagatswantseng diruiwa. Seno se amile thekiso ya nama e khibidu mo bagwebing ba province. Go fitlha Tlhakole a phirima lefapha la temothuo le tlhabollo ya metseselegae le tsibogile dikgetsi di ka nna 158. In response to this pandemic, South Africa received 2.5 million vaccines from Turkey, and Northwest Province received a share of about 100,000 vaccines, which is extremely far less than the demand. The department has set aside 12.3 million over the 2026 MTEF period to augment what is being availed by national government, to provide producer support services for sustainable agricultural development in line with the national policy on comprehensive producer development support. The Department of Agriculture and Rural Development has supported 18 beneficiaries in the red meat commodity in 2024-25 to ensure continuity across agricultural value chain and participation of the province in the red meat export market. The department has set aside 157.6 million over the 2026 MTEF period. Musa Khotla phiri irile gabusa gangwe. Gabusi gangwe. Masaki masa ka go rialo ke a tlhaloganya gore moso wa belwa. The department has refurbished a 50,000 tons of grain storage facility in Springbok Pan. The facility is aimed at providing storage for provincial farming community that cultivates hectares in the vicinity of silos. The department had set aside an amount of 23 million for both 2024, 2025, 2025, 2026 financial year for completion of electrical fence. Furthermore, the department has set aside 31.2 million over the 2026 MTF period for execution of civil and structural work in an effort of operationalizing the silo. Therefore, the department received 1.2 billion for 2026-2027, 1.3 billion for 2027-2028, and 1.3 billion for 2028-2029 financial year. Honorable Speaker, the Department of Public Works is allocated 4 billion in 2026-2027, 3.6 billion 2027-2028, and 3.8 billion in 2028-2029. Included in the 2026-2027 allocation is an amount of 115 million for road maintenance, contractor development and procurement of pothole patching equipment. An amount of 277.4 million has been set aside for 2026-27 financial year for rural road and increased to 298.9 million in the outer year. The higher unemployment rate remains a challenge, and we believe that by investing in infrastructure, it will help in alleviating poverty and creation of unemployment. And furthermore, as part of our ongoing effort, and in addition to other interventions or job creation initiatives, about 55.4 million has been set aside for EPWP to create 20,859 jobs throughout the province. Social transformation remains at the heart of building a caring, inclusive, and capable society. Through targeted investment in health, education, social development, and human settlement, the budget reaffirms the provincial government determination to improve the quality of lives of our people, ensuring that no community is left behind. Honorable Speaker, the Department of Education received 24.2 billion in 2026-2027, increased to 24.9 billion and 25.6 billion in the outer 2 years of the MTF. This allocation is made to ensure that learners have access to quality education, as well as proper initiatives like provision of school meals and implementation of no-fee school policy. Therefore, the allocated budget will be used to provide meals to learners across the 4 districts with an amount of 746.9 million in 2026-2027. Ensuring that girl learners receive uninterrupted education, an amount of 21.1 million, 22 million, and 22.7 million annually over the MTF will be used to procure sanitary dignity packs. Early childhood development is a foundation for future skills development and securing future economic participation and growth. This allocation makes provision for about 1.2 billion in respect of early childhood development to cater for both center-based and non-center-based ECD centers. The allocation sustained the subsidy increase from 17 to 24 rands for center-based programs and from 6 rand to 9 rand for non-center-based programs as pronounced in the 2025 budget. We, however, acknowledge that not all children in the province are accessing these services, as we call upon the department to ensure that it develops a strategy to ensure that all children have access to ECD programs as required by Basic Education Law Amendment Act. An amount of 221 million in 2026-2027, 230.8 million 2027-28, and 237.1 million for 2028 to 2029 is allocated to the Department of Education to address spending pressures on compensation of employees. In addition, an amount of 21.3 million has been provided in the 2026-2027 towards a teacher assistant program based on the presidential employment stimulus. Honorable Speaker, the Department of Human Settlement receives 1.7 billion in 2026-2027, 1.7 billion in 2027-2028, and 1.8 billion in 2028-2029 financial year. This allocation will assist the department to render much-needed services in terms of construction of habitable houses, upgrading of informal settlement, issuing of title deeds, and assisting those who cannot afford housing bonds to participate in the First Home Finance Scheme. The allocation of the department will also be used to eradicate mud houses and remove asbestos roof in all townships. The target for both Human Settlement Development Grant and Informal Settlement Upgrading Partnership Grant is 3,269 service site and 3,793 housing units. An amount of 18.2 billion is allocated to the Department of Health in 2026-2027, 18.6 billion for 2027-2028, and 19.1 billion for 2028-2029 financial year. The department maintains the employment of health professionals through an additional amount of 123.3 million. Allocations of 274.9 million and 82.9 million have been sustained over the MTF in respect of community health workers and payment for accruals respectively. Emergency medical and rescue services allocations over the MTF is 546.6 million in 2025-2027, 549.7 million in 2027-2028, 574.5 million in 2028-2029. The Department of Health received 481.2 million in 2026-2027, 493.8 million in 2027-2028, and 507.3 million in 2028-2029 to fund compensation of employees' cost shortfall on goods and services expenditure and for the employment of medical doctors. Included in this budget provision is an amount of 38 million in the 2026-2027 financial year for the acquisition of magnetic resonance MRI scan for the modernization of tertiary healthcare services for Mahikeng Provincial Hospital, thus expanding tertiary services in the capital of the province. The department will improve its capacity to provide mental health services to the people of the province through the allocation of the National Health Insurance Grant. The funding of these services is 34.1 million in 2026-2027, 35.6 million in 2027-28, and 36.8 million in 2028-2029 financial year. The Provincial Tshela Itekanelo campaign, integrated into World AIDS Day and other community outreach programs like Tunza Lerole, promotes health, education, physical activity, and preventative health screening. To enable the department to continue and implement effective awareness and response to HIV and AIDS, TB, malaria, cervical cancer, the department received an allocation of 1.9 billion in 2025-2027, 2 billion for 2027-2028, and 2.1 billion in 2028-2029 for the District Health Program Grant. Honorable Speaker, the Department of Arts, Culture, Sports and Recreation is allocated 860.2 million in 2026-2027 financial year to carry out the fundamental mandate to build an active, winning, creative and socially cohesive society where all residents of our province can thrive through arts, culture, heritage, language, sports and recreation. The department further receives 876.91 million for 2027-2028 and 854.7 million for 2028-2029 financial year. Included in this allocation is an additional amount of 50 million for first 2 years of the MTF to support sports, arts, culture activities, amongst other support to artists, mega events, federations, disability sports development programs, and rural games, including film development. The department will continue to focus on the provision of sustainable mass participation opportunities across the age spectrum to promote physical activity, lifestyles, whilst providing support to institutions and infrastructure that increases participation and excellence in sports. The budget for sports and recreation program amounts to 187.2 million in 2026-27 and 195.3 million for 2027-2028 and 187.2 million allocated for 2028-2029 financial year. This allocation includes additional amount of 20 million over the MTF to support athletes and federation. Honorable Speaker, the Department of Social Development receives 1.9 billion in 2026-2027, which is inclusive of an additional 50 million for compensation of employees and goods and services. The department will further be allocated 2 billion for each of the last 2 years of the MTF. The department is continuously engaging the NPOs with a focus on empowering and capacitating both funded and unfunded NPOs on compliance matters and program-specific norms and standards. To fund NPOs over the MTF, the budget set aside 239.1 million for 2026-2027 and 225.3 million for 2027-2028 and 256.3 million for 2028-2029 financial years. In an endeavor to rid the scourge of gender-based violence within the province, the department will implement community outreach prevention programs in partnership with 20 non-profit organizations that are spread across the 4 districts. The allocation for victim empowerment that caters for the needs of victims of GBV amounts to 21.3 million in 2026-2027, 22.3 million in 2027-2028, and 23.3 million in the 2028-2029 financial year. Honorable Speaker, on substance abuse, the department works closely with the Department of Health to provide detoxification services to ensure that all users receive comprehensive and quality services. To sustain the treatment of substance use disorder, 87.4 million has been set aside in 2026-2027, 93.2 million in 2027-2028, and 97.4 million in 2028-2029 financial year. This budget also provides for behavior rehabilitative interventions through provision of accredited therapeutic and developmental diversions through crime prevention programs. The related funding thereof amounts to 137.1 million in 2026-2027, 141.6 million in 2027-2028, and 143.2 million in 2028-2029 financial year. Honorable Speaker, through the national grant system, an estimated 2.9 billion has been allocated directly to municipalities in the province for water services infrastructure. This includes the 897 million B component of municipal infrastructure grant, which is ring-fenced for water service provision in municipalities. Accordingly, the Department of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs must ensure that sufficient portions of their MIGs allocated towards water services. This will help ensure that we avert the need for provincial intervention and, most importantly, secure reliable water services for our communities. In respect of early retirement and voluntary exit program for employees with 10 or more years in public service, National Treasury has approved 489 applications to the value of 217.5 million, which will be distributed in 2026-2027 to the affected departments. The program will fund the cost of the pension penalty waiver to the Government Employee Pension Fund, cost associated with additional financial incentive for employees aged 55 to 59 years, 60 to 63 years of age. Departments are urged to ensure that other costs not covered by National Treasury, including leave gratuity and resettlement, are provided within their baseline. Honorable Speaker, to ensure compliance, transparency, accountability in the utilization of public resources in line with Section 217 of the Constitution, the Provincial Treasury will intensify measures already communicated through Provincial and National Treasury PFMA instruction notes already issued regarding publication of bids awarded. This will include disclosing in the Northwest Provincial Government website particulars of received and awarded bids in response to all advertised tenders, in addition to other platforms where provincial institutions would have been communicated in terms of Treasury regulations. The Provincial Treasury has prioritized the strengthening and capacitation of its infrastructure management unit to oversee and monitor infrastructure projects in municipalities. A review of the current structure will be undertaken to ensure that the unit is able to extend oversight into infrastructure projects within municipalities as well. This will include the establishment of a dedicated capacity unit within to monitor municipal infrastructure performance while keeping focus on provincial departments. Honorable Speaker, the strengthening of accountability measures in the implementation of infrastructure projects is of paramount importance. The law provides adequate enabling provisions to pursue contracts who accept public projects but fail to perform according to their contractual obligation or willfully engage in conduct that is prohibited by, amongst others, the Prevention and Combating of Corruption Practices Act and Competition Act. Where necessary, we will invoke available legal provisions and take action against such contractors, including but not limited to blacklisting and instituting other recovery measures available in law to ensure the public resources are safeguarded. We further call on all accounting officers to strengthen project and contract management, including monitoring within their institutions, and to escalate challenges to the Provincial Treasury where necessary for purposes of further direction. This must include taking appropriate steps to recover funds from companies that are negligent or fail to meet their contractual obligations. Honorable Speaker, as we are tabled this budget, we reaffirm our commitment to fiscal responsibility, accountability, and governance, and developmental impact. The allocations, therefore, before this House reflects our determination to strengthen service delivery, stimulate economic growth, and build a resilient province. Our commitment in forging ahead with this pronouncement must encapsulate the principle of Batopili as demonstrated by Lieutenant General Baile Motswenyane, who served the South African Police with distinction for 35 years. A daughter of the soil, who was also a provincial commissioner in the province and retired as a provincial commissioner in the Free State. As we mark 70 years of anniversary of the 9th August Women March, we are inspired by Lieutenant General Motswenyane from the dusty streets of Ikageng in Potchefstroom, who defied the patriarchal barriers of our society to be one astute police officer in our country who specialized in gender-based violence cases. A dedication to public service and commitment to the safety of our communities leaves a lasting legacy in our province and the Free State. May a contribution continue to inspire us in the work of building a safer and more just society. Honorable Speaker, let me take this opportunity to acknowledge again the leadership of the African National Congress in the province led by Comrade Dumile Maloi for giving me the opportunity to lead the Provincial Treasury, as well as the leadership of the African National Congress Youth League, the African National Congress Women's League, the Veterans League, and all other organs of the ANC. I extend my sincere appreciation to the mayors, members of the mayoral committee, accounting officers of both departments, municipalities, and public entities, including members of the Executive Council, including the caucus of the ANC led by the Chief Whip of the House and the ANC, Mayor Magosho, and to all other political parties represented in the House, and importantly to the chairperson of the Portfolio Committee, Ntate Nathan Oliphant. And also to the school learners, university students, and all distinguished guests gathered here today where we tabled the budget. And I must also acknowledge the chairperson of our branch, Ntate Tataone, who is here leading the delegation of Ward 11. To the beloved people of Northwest, we commit before you today that this budget is a roadmap to the province where human dignity is not an aspiration but a reality. Through accountable governance, measurable achievements, and relentless focus on our people, we commit to delivering schools that inspire, clinics that heal, jobs that empower, and infrastructure that connects. I hereby table the following for consideration, Honorable Speaker: the Appropriation Bill 2026, the Provincial Estimate of Provincial Revenue and Expenditure, the 2026 Budget Speech, and the Socio-Economic Review and Outlook before you. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Mosenogi. Thank you very much, Honorable Mosenogi. Does the House consider this bill and concur that the bill be read for the first time? Did you hear me, Honorable Babuile? Do you concur? Thank you. Thank you, honorable members. Secretary, may you please read the bill for the first time?
This bill shall now be called the Northwest Appropriation Bill B02-2026.
Thank you, Secretariat. Honorable members, the Northwest Appropriation Bill B02-2026 2026 stand referred to the Portfolio Committee on Premier and Finance for scrutiny and further processing. Thank you, honorable members. This concludes the business of the day. The sitting is adjourned until the 17th of March 2026 for the MEC's oral reply to question the social cluster and the debate on human rights. I thank you.